Hi, Sarah, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Well, look, thank you for joining us. I think for the benefit of our users and those that will hopefully view the video, would you mind just giving a quick introduction and maybe telling us a little bit about the role that you perform at the University of Warwick?
Absolutely. So I'm Sarah Booth and I work at the University of Warwick. My role there is to manage the UK recruitment team. So my team is normally the team that go into schools and colleges across the country, promoting the university and attending UCAS exhibitions and kind of working on projects to encourage more people to come and study at Warwick.
Okay, well, that's great. So obviously, we're in very strange times at the moment. You're mentioning visiting schools. We know that obviously they're all closed at the moment. So thank you for joining us for these Datafiltr interviews. We're trying to get a quick snapshot of how people are adapting to the current environment, which obviously has changed dramatically. So without further ado, what I'd like to ask you is, how have you managed the transition when one of the biggest changes we've had so far is having to move from sort of office space to the home-based work? So how has that transition been for both yourself and maybe for the team as well?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's an interesting one because our team throughout the year we visit schools and colleges across the country, so we're quite used to working away from the office for short periods of time. But actually the real challenge here was that we weren't allowed to go back. We're not allowed to go back to the office. So yeah. It's the whole lockdown that's been the big challenge. And I think it was particularly difficult at first. I think it was a shock to everybody's system. It was, I think, the emotional and mental and physical change of everything that was going on was quite overwhelming for everyone. So I think it was quite a challenge at first. What I've done with my team is try to encourage them to set up a workstation at home that works for them. So I've got my technology all sorted now. I actually managed to get back into the office before we went into full lockdown, and I took my keyboard and my mouse and my second screen. So my office is my front room, and it's set up with my two screens and my keyboard, and it kind of feels now like I'm just in the office. It's just a little bit quieter, which sometimes is quite nice. I think, and I hope my team have kind of done similar things themselves. And I think the main difference, and I think perhaps the benefit of what we've seen, is we've actually come together a lot more. So my team have a meeting every morning at around 10 o'clock, and we get together and we just discuss how our day's been, what we've got on. And actually, I think that's been really good, and it's probably something that we'll look to continue when we go back to the office. Trying to just have a touch point every day where we just connect and see what work everyone's doing, and I think it's actually probably brought us closer as a team.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and I guess I think the things that I suppose the only downside for me is, and probably a lot of people that do similar jobs to me across the sector, is we're quite extrovert characters. We quite like being surrounded by people. That's probably why we do the job we do. And I think it's been quite a challenge to not bump into colleagues that you haven't seen for a while at a buffet lunch at a school somewhere, or in the middle of a sports hall at a school exhibition. So I think just that contact, that lack of kind of physical contact with your colleagues, and I think that's often in our sector where ideas are generated. Yeah. I think that's one of the things I've certainly found kind of more challenging is that lack of real human contact with colleagues and friends across the sector.
So I've heard similar things from how has technology played a part then in terms of that communication? Well, what sort of tools are you guys using to communicate with each other?
Technology is brilliant, but it's also the bane of my life sometimes. So technology, I think there's pretty much every technology going, and we've used it all. So we're using, the University of Warwick uses Microsoft Teams to stay in contact, and that's absolutely brilliant, and we found that absolutely essential. So it's great we used to use it anyway for kind of cross-team collaboration and projects. but it's certainly come into its own now through kind of video calling and instant chats and messaging. It just means that we're kind of close and connected. But I think we're also using things like Blackboard to do webinars. We have a live chat, Meet and Engage we use to communicate with applicants and offer holders and teacher audiences. We use Zoom to have group conversations, and in fact this afternoon the entire global recruitment team at Warwick is getting together for a travel and holidays themed quiz. To kind of keep the energy going.
Yeah.
But I think technology is brilliant, and I think it's probably come into its own. The job that a lot of us do involves a lot of travel around the country, and actually a lot of that time sat on motorways or in traffic. And I think actually as people become more familiar with technology, it potentially opens up doors to explore newer ways of engaging with our school audiences. And I'm not saying for any minute that we stop doing face-to-face work at all, because I think that is the essence of what we do. But I think we can go into schools and be there in person and, you know, Zoom in a student ambassador who's in between lectures, or, you know, take 5 minutes of an admissions tutor's time rather than dragging them to the other end of the country, which takes an entire day out of their job. Actually, I think digital technology is probably here to stay, and I think that's a really positive thing for the entire sector.
No, I totally agree. I think we would also be lost without Zoom ourselves, you know, in terms of communicating with our customers as well. So what would you say, broadly speaking, were the lessons that you've learned sort of so far from the current situation?
I think reflection on technology is not as scary as I think I first maybe thought it was. And I think probably the speed at which we can work when we want to pull something together, when we want to deliver a project. I think lessons around actually how we can work collaboratively to deliver something that is really brilliant and ticks all the boxes that we need it to tick. So I think, I think online activity, digital activity is a really good thing that we shouldn't be scared of. And I think it's probably just opened that door.
I agree. I think that the working world will look quite different, won't it, when hopefully we all get back to normal, which leads me nicely on to the next question. Not that we obviously can today put an exact date on when we might all get back to normal. There's lots of talk about schools potentially going back in June in some cases, dependent on what area of the country they're in. So what plans have you sort of put in place for as and when the world sort of comes back to normality? And let's assume schools will be back in September. Are you already putting plans in place or strategies in place for how you might tackle them?
Yeah, and I think that's a really good question, and I think we also maybe need to reflect on what is normal, and is normal going to be what was normal before? I think in terms of my team, we're certainly looking at keeping our options quite flexible, being able to work with lots of agility, being able to react to the surroundings, I think is a real key thing that we're looking at. So yeah, we're planning for all eventualities. You know, if schools go back and social distancing is removed, and we can go into schools and colleges and kind of go back to, I suppose, the way things were, doing our job how we used to do, then we've got plans in motion to do that, and we'll go back to doing that. And we're really fortunate at Warwick that we are part of a global recruitment team, and whilst some measures may be lifted in the UK, that doesn't necessarily mean that measures will be lifted across the world. So we benefit from being able to grow our team with support from our colleagues who might not be able to do their physical travel job of world recruitment. So we can certainly be agile and react to what's going on.
Yeah.
But I guess it's just, being flexible, and maybe we might need to prioritize using data to inform our decisions, but I guess really we don't know, so it's about planning for all eventualities at the moment.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that Datafiltr will be useful to you in the near future. So with that in mind, there's been a lot of quite interesting articles that I've read. I've listened to a few pods from Wonky, and there was a very interesting article recently from a senior student recruitment member at the University of Exeter, I think, and she was mentioning about what the world might look like post COVID-19. And one of the things she had mentioned in her piece was that perhaps the sector should rethink the way that it presents itself to this market. And this is one of your big problems at the moment, isn't it? The fact that obviously we know that lots of UCAS events have been cancelled. I was obviously looking forward to seeing Stephen in Exeter. We normally bump into each other around sort of March time. So what are your views? I mean, obviously there's a lot of school events that have been cancelled. I imagine some of those may be rescheduled for earlier next year. I think UCAS are talking about perhaps moving some of their events to start in the autumn. How do you think that the sector as a whole can sort of manage the fact that there might be lots more activity tried to be put into a very short period of time?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, and certainly at Warwick we have always worked quite collaboratively across our widening participation and student recruitment teams, and I know that's the same across the sector. In fact, myself, I'm a member of HelloA, which is an organisation for schools liaison professionals, many of you will know, and I think there's certain things that we can do together. So yeah, demand might be high, we might need to attend 100 events in 1 week with a team of 4 people, which is nigh on impossible. So I think we really need to think as a sector, how can we best work together? And I think all of us that do this job have this sense of helping students, helping teachers, helping parents to make informed decisions about higher education. And so, yes, we might want to represent our individual university and showcase our individual university strengths. But I think if there is a time where we need to be in multiple places at once, we're going to have to prioritise, and we might choose the events that are of most strategic importance to us, but knowing full well that our colleagues from similar universities, from other universities across the sector, are presenting the same messages to their audiences as well. So where I might talk about the benefits of a Russell Group university, or the benefits of doing research within your course, or the benefits of studying abroad on a degree, I would hope that my colleagues across the universities in the UK are sharing those similar sentiments and those similar messages with students that they're meeting. So students are getting broad, general information about how universities can support them with their futures. And then those students can hopefully still make use of the new digital activity that is going on across the sector to really kind of tone down those, or kind of hone in on what's important to them, and pick their university as a result of that. So I think as a sector we need to come together and work quite collaboratively. Certainly there's lots of projects going on already across the sector, with universities coming together, sharing best practice. It's something that we've been doing for years and years and years, and I think we will continue to do that.
Okay, are you able at this point to mention any of the projects that might be occurring without giving away too many state secrets?
Yeah, there's a really exciting project that we're working on across the Russell Group at the moment. So trying to find a way that the Russell Group universities can work together, but it's not all in place yet. And just in case it doesn't happen, we want to, I don't want to kind of go into too much detail on it, but there's certainly exciting things, and coming together as a Russell Group, a type of university that's already grouped together. I think coming together we can do something really exciting, which perhaps just makes the university and higher education sector a little bit easier to navigate for students and for teachers.
And this is a question I haven't asked any of the other interviews, because it's only just occurred to me, but obviously we know that teachers at schools and careers advisors at schools are in exactly the same position that we're in currently. So have you managed to, you were talking about the internal communication having improved through technology. Has technology played a part in terms of keeping in touch with those sort of careers advisors who obviously must feel very frustrated with their students because it's quite difficult for them to pass on the correct information.
Yeah, and actually that's something, you know, we've heard lots of things across the sector. So we have a live chat facility at Warwick, so we can organise live chats with teachers. Our teachers can log in and ask us questions. We've been in constant communication, sending our kind of teacher network emails and updates with what's going on. But I think what I'm hearing is that there's real disparity across the sector in schools. So some schools are set up, their students have laptops already, perhaps they're an iPad school, their students will have technology. And just a school I was talking to yesterday is just doing their normal timetable, but teaching it virtually. My baby brother is actually in year 12 at the moment, so he is, you know, I mean, he actually uses Microsoft Teams at his school as well, so it's great. You can kind of chat together about university, and I'm secretly kind of promoting Warwick to him and all his friends. But you know, he's using their laptops and iPads, and they're having normal teaching, but just virtually. And in fact, they've got exams this week, so they're doing normal exams. But actually what is really interesting, and I think there was an article on BBC this morning, is about digital poverty. And actually, I think as a sector, and perhaps something for colleagues in widening participation teams especially, is just to recognise that actually, while some students do have technology and do have access to internet connections and mobile phones and can engage with digital technology, I think there's a real piece of work that we can be doing across the sector to consider how we continue to engage with students that don't have access to technology and perhaps are in a household where they have one laptop across the whole household and their parents need it for working from home. I think we have some sort of responsibility to try and ensure that those students are supported as well. I don't have any solutions as to how we're doing that, but I maybe think that's something that across the sector we can discuss further.
Yeah, well, just some good news on that front. I only heard from a friend of mine who also works in a sort of education consultancy. There is some very serious talk about the government purchasing a significant number of Chromebooks to be able to distribute. So let's hope that happens. I'm not quite sure how we're going to pay for all this, but it sounds like a good solution to obviously help those that don't have that support. Yeah. So just to finish off, if you were to give, let's keep this down to 2 tips. What 2 tips would you give to colleagues across the sector in terms of how to sort of positively move forward, because it looks as though the lockdown is going to go on for a while longer. So what are your 2 top tips for working from home during lockdown?
Oh, good question. I think the first has to be mental health. Make sure you're looking after your mental health, make sure you are taking a break. It's really difficult sometimes to differentiate workspace with home space when it's all in the same area. So certainly things that my team and I talk about is making sure they get out for fresh air. They are using that period of time where they can leave the house to actually go and enjoy some fresh air and take a break from work. Yeah. So mental health is super important. Look after your mental health. And my second tip is probably related to that. You know, it's go easy on yourself. I know that colleagues across the world probably have different kind of priorities. You know, people who are struggling with young children and trying to manage homeschooling and working from home whilst toddlers need looking after. And also people that are on their own in their houses as well. You know, look, just be kind to yourself and don't put too much pressure on. If you need to take a longer lunch break or work at different times, or take a day where perhaps you're less productive and another day where you're more productive, I think just be really easy on yourself and stay connected, keep in contact and look after yourselves. And that's probably way more than 2 things, but important.
No, that's fantastic advice. I'm absolutely amazed that my children haven't appeared somewhere in the background whilst I've been doing this. I'm gonna obviously take your advice on board as well, and I totally agree. I think mental health is a really, really important issue. Can I thank you for your time today? I've really enjoyed that. And I hope that we can see each other face to face in the not too distant future, as they say.
Yeah.
And good luck with all the projects that you're running. So once again, thanks for taking part in the Datafiltr.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for having me.